everyone, from wherever you might be joining us today. We are excited to present today's webinar on artificial intelligence, real quality, and exploring AI testing technologies pace and impact in 2024.
Thank you. My name is Christian Beatty. I'm the Director of Marketing here at TestRail. Been on board since January. I have a background primarily in other B2B SaaS industries, sales tech, transportation technology. And these types of reports, when we do these industry benchmark and survey reports, are something that I've done quite a lot of in the past and very passionate about. And so I'm excited to be able to share the results of what we've gathered here today.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm Judy Bossy. I'm the VP of Product Management here at IDERA. As part of this role, I oversee multiple brands, especially in software testing and security. TestRail personally is one of my favorite brands, favorite teams to be working on. So I'm very excited to be here. My background is in software testing tools companies where I've led product management and product marketing teams, both in startup environments and mid to large size environments. So really excited about what we'll be covering as part of this webinar.
And speaking of that, Judy, I'll let you go ahead and talk through the agenda a bit as well.
Thanks. So for the agenda, our topic today is centered around AI, exploring AI's testing technology, pace, and impact in 2024. We are going to review the findings from a large survey that we recently did. Our marketing team is fabulous. And what I love about working with marketing here at TestRail is that we not only work with marketing from a standpoint from broadcasting the message that we have to share from a product development and release standpoint, but we also use marketing, the marketing resources, marketing team very strategically as a way to conduct market research and customer research so that we can better inform product roadmap decisions. So this survey is just one of the many examples of product and marketing working together to do this market research. And we're so excited to share with you the findings, the key takeaways, and exactly what this means for TestRail. I don't want to give away too many details, but if you stick around until the end of the webinar, what we'll cover is, what does AI mean for TestRail? What does this mean for test management at large? And what do we plan on doing about it in terms of product roadmap? Now, with the agenda down, I'd love to dig into the survey and let Christian lead the way.
Excellent. Thank you, Judy. I know everyone's going to be very excited to hear what's going on at the end, so I'll try to make my part quick and efficient. You got to eat your vegetables before you get to the good parts, right? So I think you guys will enjoy this, hopefully, as much as I have. So as Judy mentioned, if for those who may have seen or downloaded our annual software testing and quality report, we asked a very interesting question there that was done the end of last year about, are teams currently using AI, and if so, how are they implementing that in their processes? And from that question, we internally had all sorts of other questions that we wanted to answer, and that really spawned the need for this survey. So we took the results from one question. We just wanted to have a deep dive on AI in QA. What do people think? What are people doing with it? What's the likelihood that someone's using it already in the marketplace? There really wasn't a source for this information available at the time we were doing this research. Last I checked, there still isn't. So we wanted to just take on those questions ourselves. Very first question, are you currently leveraging AI in your QA process? 65% of the over 1,000 people that we asked this to said yes, they are currently using AI, which is very interesting because we assumed, based on the previous results that we collected last December, that it was actually going to be lower than this. This is much higher, 20% higher, in fact, than we initially thought it was going to be. Based on the previous data point we had collected. So clearly in 2024, you're seeing this massive surge, maybe unsurprising to some of you, but interesting nonetheless, of people who are rushing to start using AI as part of their QA process. We're going to find out more as we go through. We're going to qualify this a little bit. What does that actually mean? What does it look like? What tools are they using, et cetera? For those who said that they're not, the 35% of the teams that are professionals that said that they're not using AI, we wanted to ask, what are the things that are preventing you from doing that? We expected, again, to see data privacy and security very top of the list, but interesting in this situation that the number one answer was actually uncertainty about the benefits. And we're not here to necessarily to say that you have to use AI or you're going to have to embrace AI in the future. We're not necessarily advocating for one position versus another, but it is here. And we do want to, try to share some of the lessons that other QA professionals have shared in this survey about the benefits of what they've seen. So maybe we can help address some of that first concern just with the content that we're going to be sharing today. But then number two, right below it, data privacy and security issues. TestRail works with a lot of industries that are very compliance focused and have a lot of regulations that they need to follow. Finance, energy, defense, and healthcare, for instance, just to name a few at the top of my head. And there are really big concerns about what data are you sharing with these AI tools and how are they consuming it? What's private, what's not private, that do need to be addressed. And it's been a part of the conversation since AI first, started being talked about in this industry. And it's going to continue to be talked about until software providers and industry experts come to some sort of conclusion about what sort of standardization looks like. And then you can see the other answers are kind of below there, and they are significant, they're interesting, but they're far below the top two answers.
Yeah, Christian, I find this piece especially interesting when it comes to our product management and development teams and trying to plan out exactly how we're going to be implementing AI, because one major goal is to address these data privacy and security issues in a way where we can allow for as much adoption of AI features as possible. But of course, different companies may have different requirements, especially for those in those regulated industries that you speak of. So some of the decisions that we're looking to make is how do we make sure that these features are optional, right? They're configurable. They can be turned on or turned off if customers want to. We also want to make sure that, of course, customers' data is kept separate from other customers' data. And then lastly, for those customers who have TestRail installed on server, on premise, or maybe even don't have the ability to connect TestRail to the outside internet, providing some sort of way for them to leverage their own AI if they want to bring their own AI and connect those to enable the AI features inside of TestRail. Those are some of the things that we are planning for.
Yeah, and I do think another big part of our plans is alluded to in here, but the uncertainty about the benefits is something that I think marketing and product are going to be partnering on, and a lot of different companies, especially here at TestRail, trying to get the word out about how AI is being used and what it's being used for, some of the pros and cons and processes and best practices related to that. So that will be a major focus for certainly TestRail, and I'm sure other providers out there over the course of the next year or two. We know a lot of people are using AI. We know why people aren't using AI. We wanted to find out for the folks who are using AI in their process, is it actually helping? Are you seeing it impact productivity? This one's sort of a no-brainer. I didn't necessarily expect it to be this high of a number, but 94% of all people said that it is significantly or somewhat improving their productivity and coverage. This is going to become a little bit more significant later on as we see how it's being used and the tools that are being used. I would, just to kind of give a little bit of a sneak peek, it's still very nascent technology in our space, right? It's still got a lot of growing to do. And the fact that this many people are saying that, yeah, it's helping me and it's in a significant way is important. It is interesting. that does definitely speak to what the potential of this could be for others moving forward. How are they using AI as another important question, and this runs the gamut, right? There's a whole slew of things that you can apply AI towards. We just took some of the most prevalent or most talked about options or use cases that we found during our research, and we just asked people how are they doing it. Multiple choice, answer as many as you can, select all that apply, whatever you want to say. Right at the top of the list, write test cases or scenarios, create test automation scripts. You see this couple different themes in this data, which I think is important to call attention to. There's AI focused on individual productivity of a QA professional, trying to get more out of a single workday for one person who's doing QA and testing. And then you have things that are happening at more of a team level, helping to enhance the collaboration or being able to improve the visibility or test coverage over a wide range of tests or testers, an entire testing department. And so you're seeing a combination of different use cases that apply, for a different set of responsibilities and scopes. We did ask, are people using it at the bottom there, self-healing test automation? Not something that's actually out there as much as we put it on there just to see how people would react. We got a really low response to it. Again, these are kind of things that may be interesting to look at as the AI continues to mature for the space. As part of that last question, we asked, where do you see AI being implemented in the future where it would be most helpful? And this again sort of corroborates where people are using it today. So some of it's interesting as just the consistency of the answers, but test automation and script generation is number one by a significant margin. Right behind it was repository integration and maintenance. And then you see there tied for third, automation, productivity, that's the individual and productivity enhancements, and then data analysis. How are we aggregating and analyzing that data for improved insights and decision making?
I think it's also interesting to note here, Christian, the fact that these responses actually came in the form of open text, like free text responses. I thought it was so fascinating that we, in preparation for this webinar, Christian, used ChatGPT to summarize the responses to be able to group things into these buckets.
Right. So if someone said that they were using it for test case generation, then we asked them, give me examples of how you do that. We did use ChatGPT for it, so it was a little bit of, yeah, it was an interesting use case for ourselves. And when we published the report version of this, by the way, I didn't mention that before, we are going to be publishing a downloadable report that has a lot more detail on this. We're going to give some actual examples of insights that people shared on how they're doing this. So hopefully you can actually use that if you're interested in taking that and implementing it in your day-to-day process. All right, this is probably one of my favorite slides in the deck. So what we know AI is being used, but what tools are actually being used for these 65% of people that are using AI today? And number one, with a huge margin, is ChatGPT. And then you have well below that all these point solutions, all these AI embedded features and capabilities on all these other parts of the DevOps tech stack. And what I think, there's two interesting points that I want to make about this slide. One, the fact that ChatGPT has such a significant lead here, if you want to call it that, does suggest that even though AI is being used frequently in our space, it's still very homegrown process. There's people who are just doing it themselves. They're going to ChatGPT, maybe with or without their leadership support or knowledge. I'm not going to editorialize that, but you see there, people kind of taking it upon themselves to do it because technology providers they're still rolling out features, and there's not really one standard that works for every single team, every single person or use case. Right below that, you have this huge list of other providers. And I think what's interesting about that is this is just a cross section of all the providers that are out there that are developing AI. Virtually every software company on the planet right now is developing AI features. And if I was to put every single one on here, it wouldn't fit on the slide. And so that does lead to some questions about, this proliferation of all this different AI and all these different narrow use point solutions. How's that gonna fit together in the future? And how do we kind of standardize across all these different providers? Judy, I'm sorry, I think I cut you off.
No, no worries. I think it's fascinating that ChatGPT is so widely used. I think also too, it's interesting to see several test automation solutions mentioned here, notably Catalan, which I know Catalan has an integration into TestRail if you want. It's also great to see my former employer, Functionize, be mentioned in here as well. Functionize is a AI-powered low-code test automation solution. So great to see so many different tools being adopted, several of which here are already able to be integrated with TestRail.
All right, we're on the downhill slope. What types of testing is AI being used for? This one, actually, the results are pretty widely dispersed. I mean, regression testing is at the top of the list. Exploratory testing, maybe those things are obvious for everyone, but I expected to see certain types of tests be used, having AI being used significantly more. But what the results actually show is people are dabbling with AI across the entire series of tests that an organization would be expected to run. Some of these answers there's too small of a difference to be statistically significant. And so this just suggests that it's being used and applied everywhere possible for those teams who are currently using it. All right, one of the final slides. We asked the audience what needs to happen in order to make AI more widespread, to improve AI adoption across the entire industry. The first one was training and education. People need to know how to use AI, where to use AI. We need to develop standards, best practices, and processes that everyone can adopt to ensure consistency of results. Integration of not ChatGPT, but of AI into existing workflows. Right now, it's one thing to have a ChatGPT that sits outside of your solution or outside of your tech stack, but that's probably not going to be allowed or it's probably not going to be the best way forward for a lot of companies or industries. And so we need to figure out how we can incorporate AI responsibly and consistently in their existing workflows. And then the accuracy and reliability. I use ChatGPT and I know that it takes a lot of training to get the answers to be effective for me. And I'm sure with a very technical use case, it's even more so. The reality is the accuracy, reliability just is not there today. It takes less time to get an answer, but it takes more time to evaluate the accuracy, to comb through that and make sure it's working correctly than it does if you're just going to do it from scratch. And so there does need to be some significant strides in that. And the last one is customization and adaptability. Generally speaking, AI solutions are very good at getting you like 80% of the way there, but that last 20%, which is what you need specific to your situation or use case, is very difficult for it to do unless you put in some significant time in training it to do what you need. All right. Key takeaways, and then I'm going to hand it back over to Judy. I'm sure you guys are all tired of hearing them from the marketing guy. But AI and QA is still very homegrown. It's very decentralized. There's not a lot of structure and operating principles. These are the things that, as an industry, we are going, both the technology providers and the consumers are going to need to solve in the next couple of years if AI is going to continue to reach mainstream adoption. There are still a lot of significant barriers to overcome. Judy mentioned that already. For certain industries, AI is just a no. It's just not possible. And until we can kind of figure out ways of implementing AI in a way that allows some of these more compliance focused or regulated industries to use it, we're just never going to see that come to full widespread use. At top of that list is security and privacy concerns, and rightfully so. I even saw a question as we were talking about this, about how you can do this without sharing proprietary information. It's a very big concern, and it's just a showstopper for a lot of companies, a lot of people. Education needs to be on the number 1 or 2 priorities for the industry over the next couple of years, and then AI is going to continue to enhance the role of human testers. This is our sort of position, and Judy's this is kind of my handoff to her, but AI is going to continue to enhance the role of human testers rather than replacing them. AI is not going to replace QA, but people who don't use AI are going to be at a significant disadvantage in the future. And so we want to try to find ways of incorporating it to make people more productive and more competitive in the market. So I'll hand it off from here.
Thanks,
Judy.
Christian. So before we talk about TestRail for AI, I just wanted to know, like, seeing the results from the survey was really eye-opening for me and the rest of the product management teams. I think that whenever we do a survey like this, we have to take it with a grain of salt due to the sample size. But I think having over 1,000 responses from software testing professionals, and we did add several qualifiers in there to make sure that, you know, the people whose responses we were taking note, like, are actual practitioners in the software testing space. I just think that the main takeaway here is that the demand for AI is very strong, and that testers are already starting to leverage AI even outside of their testing tools. So that's really promising to see. And so what this means for TestRail is that we are very busy making sure that we are planning to implement AI very soon. I know there's a lot of excitement and buzz around this. And before we talk about, you know, the different use cases for test management and what this means as far as roadmap, I want to start with a bit of an outlook for what we believe this means for test management as a whole. So how does AI affect how testers manage their tests? How will test management need to evolve to meet these AI demands from the market? Those are some of the questions that I'm looking to answer in the next slide. All right, so the impact of AI on testing, really taking a step back. AI presents both a challenge and an opportunity for software testing. If you think about all the code that's being generated through AI-assisted development, there's a lot more code being generated now at a faster pace. And when there's more code being generated, it requires more testing at a faster pace. And what's the easiest way to test faster? Test automation is often seen as the obvious answer, but with the need to automate tests, that results in even more tests that need to be reviewed and maintained. So all of this culminates in a huge need for testers to be able to synthesize large amounts of data, understand where things need to be improved as they look through all of these tests, to be able to find ways to test more with less time. And in the midst of all of this, they're looking to make business decisions. So we think that with AI, test strategy skills are going to be even more difficult to hone into with traditional test management software. And this is where we see the opportunity for test management. And if you look at where test management is evolving, this is where we see test management evolving to meet this demand for strategic quality. Because let's face it, features like test authoring, test case versioning, approvals, even integrations, these features have been around for a decade plus for test management tools. With testers now, in the midst of AI creating so much test case and test execution data, there's a lot of noise to sift through, particularly for test leaders, those that manage teams of testers. And when we think about the perspective of a test leader. Test leaders want an easy way to see the progress of quality impacting initiatives. They want to be able to make decisions quickly. They want to know how their teams are performing without taking the time to micromanage every single tester. They want to know if they're getting the most out of their test automation decisions, and if they need to rip and replace what they have for test automation, or invest in maintaining their existing suite. They want to know if the testing headcount that they have today is enough for them to meet their release goals, or if they need to supplement their teams with additional testers. So with all of these decisions that need to be made, we want to empower QA leaders to visualize quality so that they can make these informed decisions to either release faster and help generate more revenue for the company, or to help cut waste and optimize costs, whatever your overarching company strategy may be. So this area of reporting, analytics, and insights, what we're calling strategic quality, is where we want to take TestRail even further and extend our capabilities with AI. And while we can explore new features and enhancements that also help with things like test authoring or collaboration or planning, we think that, taking a step back, if we look at TestRail in the next 3 to 5 year time horizon, in the long-term future, these features that are designed to help QA leaders is where we think the bigger opportunity and the bigger impact will be, especially for enterprise test management. So there's a lot of use cases to apply for test management, and seeing from the survey data that the demand for these AI features is so strong. We're really looking to take a holistic view, not just building these analytics and insights features for test leaders, but also looking at these other individual productivity features like test authoring and collaboration. So the AI use cases that we are seeing commonly requested from customers. I'd love to go over 6 of them with you today. Looking at the Q&A panel, I see a lot of questions from testers asking, what sort of AI use cases are there for manual testing? What sort of AI features can be applied into TestRail? So as we talk to outside of this survey, we're doing a lot of conversations with key customers to understand how they want to apply AI, what sort of ideas they have, what sort of issues they might have with adoption. These 6 are the top use cases that we think would be beneficial for TestRail, and I'll go over them with you today. Okay, so the first is being able to generate a manual test case based on a requirement. This is using LLM tools like ChatGPT or Claude, being able to generate a test case automatically by feeding the existing data in a requirement format. This might be, analyzing the acceptance criteria on a requirement and being able to translate into a proper test case format with precondition, with the description, with the steps to reproduce expected results, and so on. This is seen as a very popular request, I think, because there's several tools in the market that allow you to do this today. So I think this would be low-hanging fruit for us to consider. The next item is similar in that it's also using generative AI, but it's improving an existing test case for easier test maintenance. So you might point to a specific test case that already exists and ask the LLM to improve the test case to make it easier to maintain, being able to incorporate things, features inside of TestRail that make maintenance easier, things like reusable steps, parameterizations, and configurations. The third use case that you see here is using machine learning, being able to detect duplicates that exist in your test repository. A very common story that I hear from our customers is, hey, I just joined this team, or I just joined this company, and we've been using TestRail for many years. We have hundreds or thousands upon thousands of test cases. And to be honest, I'm not sure if, we have redundant tests, but I'm afraid to delete these tests and to do this cleanup because we might need to keep all of this around. And, the risk of having these redundant test cases is not only are things harder to find, right? You have to poke into each and every individual folder, try to see if this is the test case that you're looking for, if that's the test case that you're looking for. But what this means is it can significantly extend release testing cycles, right? So if you only need to execute one test, but you actually end up executing the same test 5 different times because of this redundancy, you're multiplying your testing time by 5x. So being able to provide testers with the ability to identify these duplicate test cases, even if they're not worded exactly the same, if they are somewhat similar, to identify them and give you the option to either archive, delete, or merge them together. That would be the use case here. The next set of use cases are more related to automation. So the first use case that you see is being able to generate an automated test case using plain text English. I think that one of the barriers to test automation is having a technical resource who understands how to code, who understands your testing framework, to be able to take a manual test and quickly generate an automated test with it. Nowadays, there's some pretty innovative tools out there that provide this codeless test automation experience that you can simply feed a set of manual tests written out step by step in plain text English and use that to automatically generate test scripts. You don't see the test scripts as the way the test is written, but because it is an automated tool, behind the scenes, it is still generating and running a script. So being able to do that automatically. This natural language processing capability is really innovative and would, of course, cut down the time to convert a manual test into automation significantly. The second use case that you see here is using test impact analysis to prioritize test plans. This is all based on the premise that you can't possibly test every single test with every single change. In every release, you want to do as much regression testing as you need, but just enough so that you are balancing both risk and time, right? If we were to test every single test that ever existed, it would take forever to release. So this feature would allow you to make these test scope decisions more intelligently, so that based on the changes that are detected, either in your application source code management tool or based on changes to requirements in the release in Jira, be able to highlight which existing tests in TestRail need to be executed, therefore giving you the ability to cut your testing time to just enough to cover the changes or the impacted areas in this given release. The last use case that you see here is being able to classify defects and the root cause of failed tests. This again is related to test automation. We know from talking to a lot of customers that when they have their regression suite of automated tests, a lot of times what they get back after the execution is just so many failures. And these failures take a lot of time to dig through, to analyze, to understand, okay, is this an actual bug in my application, or is this actually a test that needs to be refactored? Or maybe this is an environment issue that led to this failure. So being able to diagnose these issues takes a lot of time, and it also takes somebody who's skilled with automation. So this feature would be using machine learning to be able to point out anomalies so that you can more quickly identify the root cause of these failures and be able to do something about it quickly. That's the value add. So what we just covered are 6 different use cases, the top use cases that we find to be the most in demand and the most impactful when it comes to what sort of features we should add to the TestRail roadmap. And as I mentioned earlier, whenever we work with the marketing team and interface with customers, we want to use every opportunity to learn about our customers, learn about the market as much as possible. So I know there are a lot of attendees in this webinar. I'd love to use this opportunity to do a quick poll based on these 6 use cases that I described for test management. Which of these AI features do you think would be most helpful to add to TestRail? And this is a multi-select, multiple choice question. So feel free to pick up to 3 of these 6 use cases. And in a couple minutes, we will share the results. All right, let's see the results of this poll. Okay, so it looks like we have pretty significant results pointing to the most popular one being able to generate a manual test case based on the requirement. The second one is being able to generate automated tests using plain text English. And then the third is improving test cases for easier maintenance. It's interesting to see so many of the popular responses related to test case generation. It seems like creating new test cases is the biggest problem area or the biggest opportunity that our attendees see in applying AI. All right, so I know we are coming up on the end of the webinar. Feel free to post any questions as we're leaving time for questions to be answered. But what I wanted to leave you with today is our view into what we are planning in the roadmap. So there is a lot of buzz right now, specifically around generative AI, especially with the rise of ChatGPT, Claude, and other similar LLM tools. We think that because of this, generative AI might be the easiest or lowest hanging fruit to implement features quickly to deliver these AI features for our customers. As I mentioned, being able to generate a test case based on a requirement, this is a prime example of generative AI. For predictive AI, though, there's a lot of promise, I think, when it comes to doing things like analyzing large amounts of data, being able to analyze patterns, and to be able to make predictions or forecasts about future events and outcomes. As I mentioned, with where test management is evolving and the strategic test skills that are going to be in higher demand for testing as a result of AI, I think there's a lot of promise in the predictive AI front, especially for test management and especially for test leaders. So without being too specific or giving away too many details, because a lot of this is still in the works, here is the TestRail AI roadmap, the way we're looking at the next year in implementation. So first, we're targeting generative AI features. What we saw in today's poll is that there's a lot of demand for generative AI features, particularly to create a test case based on a requirement. I think this is use case number 1 to implement as part of this roadmap. But as we go forward into the longer term future, we think that servicing our customers' needs to develop strategic quality skills, we want to provide more predictive AI and insights and analytics-based features to help test leaders, especially pinpoint areas of concern and pinpoint data points that really support actionable decision-making. So that's where we're headed to next, being able to surface up the test data, whether that be test executions, test creations, or test failures, to identify areas that are improving, identify areas that need to be improved. These insights and analytics features are primarily what I'm most excited about because they will truly be innovative. They're going to be a bit more complex to build, of course, but it's great to share, the learnings that we've got from this survey with the attendees today. I want to thank Christian and the rest of the marketing team for their support in launching this survey, presenting the survey results, and especially for helping our product management teams use the survey information to guide and inform product roadmap decisions. So thank you, everybody. I hope this was a helpful look into the TestRail AI roadmap and an informative session to see, from the survey of over 1,000 respondents, how other testers in the industry are looking at AI and adopting it already. All right, so we will transition over into questions, but before we do so, where we are in the AI implementation process is that we would love to do a beta for interested customers to provide feedback before we launch to the general public. So if you are interested in joining the TestRail AI beta, please answer yes here. If you are not interested, there is no pressure to answer yes. I would prefer that you do not respond or just simply answer no thanks. That way, the list of respondents that we have are true interested parties, because with this beta program, we'd love to reach out to you, possibly schedule some calls to share with you what the features look like and get some in-depth feedback. So this will require a little bit of investment on your part in terms of time, but we'd love to reach out for anybody who's interested here.
All right. Do you want to just jump over to the questions while we let that roll?
Yeah, sounds good.
That work?
All right, let me jump in here. And so we have a lot of questions about some of the more details about TestRail's future. So Judy, maybe you could speak slightly to a bit more detail on what generative AI could look like in TestRail, what predictive AI insights analytics could be, since there are a number of questions around that.
Sure.
And
So
this is all obviously possibility since it does not yet exist, hence the beta, right?
yes, so we are still in the process of planning out this implementation. I think based on the survey and poll results from today, our plans are very much in line with the top requested features. As a reminder, the top requested features were being able to generate a test case from a requirement and being able to improve a test case so that it's easier to maintain. Those are two of the Gen AI use cases that we're planning on implementing to TestRail in the near future. And then as far as the predictive AI and insights and analytics features go, I don't want to give away too many details. We are in the process of buy, build, or partner decisions. And so I don't want to give away too much at this point.
That's fair. Thank you. And then the next question is, so uh, someone still doesn't see how they can get AI to write test cases without revealing all of their proprietary information. So their ISO certification requires that they can't have those kinds of risks out there. And what recommendations might you have for them on how to handle this?
Yeah, so first, we want to provide these AI features in a way that where both TestRail Cloud and TestRail Server customers can use them. For TestRail server customers, ideally, we would provide the ability for a customer to connect their own AI. And this would allow you to ensure that your data does not have any interaction with the TestRail API for LLM. I think some companies have their own LLM that they prefer to use. And so this would be a good opportunity to do that.
Thank you. Next question is Garrett's asking, outside of using a web recorder, how is AI used for script generation?
So for script generation, there are a lot of features, a lot of tools out there that are cloud-based, that are truly on the bleeding edge of innovation. A lot of AI-powered test automation tools like Functionize, for example, which is a previous company where I've worked. You have the ability to not only use things like a web recorder to scrape metadata from your different elements on a UI, but you also have the ability to use really innovative features like natural language processing. So what that means is you can simply write out your test script in plain text English, say, navigate to google.com, search for puppies, click on the button search, and through natural language processing, it's able to understand your test intent. So it'll go to google.com, it'll put in the search bar puppies, it'll automatically do this without the need to generate those scripts, like the code that's needed, even though it is code technically being produced and run behind the scenes. If anybody hasn't heard of Functionize yet, I think it's a great tool that's an example of being able to do something like this.
Perfect. And then next up is it mandatory to use AI with automation testing, or is there any scope for manual testing as well?
Yeah, so I think this question came in earlier in the webinar before we went over the use cases, but especially the 3 use cases at the beginning, being able to generate a test case based on a requirement, that's a manual use case. Being able to improve a test case for easier maintenance, that's another example. Being able to detect duplicates in your tests, that could be for manual test cases as well. And then the other example from the second slide was test impact analysis. So analyzing your existing manual test case repository to suggest which of those should be cherry picked for execution in the next release based on impacted changes in your source code as developers are writing code, or based on the requirements that are planned for a given release in Jira. These would be 2 other examples.
Great. And then on the subject of information security, because that's very critical nowadays, would a local environment with specific AI models installed and properly trained be the right or only way to go to avoid data leaks, or what thoughts do you have on that?
I think that's likely the surest way, especially for customers who want to keep their data hosted on premise. That's the main way that I would recommend. But as we are implementing this, we want to make sure that all of our customers' data are kept separate and independent of one another. And that is how TestRail data is stored already today. So that's a promise that we would want to continue to keep for TestRail Cloud as well, since, as Christian mentioned, we have a lot of customers in highly regulated environments that still use TestRail Cloud today.
Hmm. Great. I know we have just a few minutes left, so I think we'll take one more question and then we're going to wrap it up. Um, so how would you differentiate between AI and test automation?
So this is an interesting question. I think what the industry has suffered from over the last 5 years is a lot of tools saying they have AI when it's really not AI. AI by definition is something that is beyond a normal algorithm that's used in automation. That is not simple, code that is informing an application how to behave. AI is something that learns from data, that gets smarter over time, and has this artificial intelligence about it. It's using things like machine learning to be able to analyze large amounts of data, to be able to provide responses or make predictions the same way a human would by understanding the intent. So there's a lot of promise out there, but as I mentioned, I think the industry has suffered a little bit from software providers saying they have AI when it's really just software algorithms or just automation behind the scenes. So I'm hopeful that in the next, couple years that as these AI technologies like truly mature and become more widely adopted, it'll be easier for users and customers to be able to identify, okay, this is a provider that's using real AI, or this is a provider that is just claiming to have AI. I think we, as part of this like education, are starting to become a lot more informed to be able to differentiate the two.